Basic Algebra 2, it's time to do some math. Today we are going to look at the second part of section 7.2. We're going to work on some rational exponents and looking at some of the different properties. Now you'll notice that these properties are very, very similar. In fact, they're the same as the properties of exponents that we studied earlier during the school year. We'll just kind of walk through these. So the first property, it shows that if you have exponents, okay, and in our case they're going to be fraction exponents, but if you have the same base and you're multiplying, you write that base one time, multiplication goes with addition, so now you're going to add those exponents together. The next property shows that if you have a base that actually has two exponents, one exponent is in parentheses, one exponent is outside, you write that base once and you multiply the two exponents together. Okay, the third property, if you have an exponent outside of a set of parentheses, it doesn't matter how many terms are in there. If you have numbers, one variable, two variables, that exponent has to go to everything inside as an exponent. So notice here, A now has a power of M. B now has a power of M. Number 4, just a quick reminder, anytime you have a negative exponent, that puts it on the bottom of a fraction. When it's negative here, once it moves to the bottom, you no longer show the negative. If you have the same base on top and bottom of a fraction, you're only allowed to have the base in your solution one time. So you write the base once. Subtraction, our division bar, our fraction actually means that you're dividing. Division goes with subtraction. So you write the common base and you subtract. Top exponent minus bottom exponent. This is very similar to property number 3 up here. Notice that they said that you're going to go ahead and take that exponent and bring it into both terms. The same thing occurs if you have a fraction. That exponent goes to everything whether it's on the top or the bottom. So A would get an exponent of M, B would get an exponent of M. And so what we're going to do for part 2 is just kind of go through some problems, and randomly these properties are going to show up. It's not going to be in order, they're going to be shuffled around. Sometimes you may even need to use more than one property. Okay, so we'll kind of go a little bit slow and just make sure we've got it. Number 1, notice I have two bases that are the same. There's a rule that says you can have each base only occur one time. So you write that base once. Now this is multiplication. Remember, multiplication goes with addition. So the way to figure out what our exponent is you have to add the two current exponents. So 2/3 plus 1/3. When you are adding fractions, you have to have a common denominator, and we do. This is a 3 and this is a 3. You're adding the numerators. 2 plus 1 is 3. So this is 3 over 3. Hey, check this out. 3 over 3 is 1. 6 to the power of 1 is 6. So 6 to the 2/3 times 6 to the 1/3 has a value of 6. Okay, so that was property number 1. Now we're going to go ahead and look at property number 2. Our base is 3. We only have one base. That's awesome. But 3 has two exponents. 3/4 is on the inside and 4 is on the outside. If you have exponents inside and outside, this shows us that you multiply them. If I take 3/4 times 4, remember, if you ever multiply something by the denominator, it's going to cancel. So by multiplying the 4 would cancel the denominator, leaving you an exponent of 3. 3 to the power of 3 means 3 times 3 times 3, that's 27. So 3 to the 3/4 to the power of 4 is 27. Okay, now this one is going, I guess I did go right in order here. I'll mix them up later. This M has to go to both of the things on the inside. So here, the 1/2 goes to both the 16 and the 25. So it's going to look like this. 16 to the 1/2 power times 25 to the 1/2 power. Now from our last section, if you have 16 to the 1/2 power, remember that's 16, that's the square root of that, because 2 would be an index, so it's a square root. 25, that goes underneath the radical. The denominator is a 2, so that's a normal square root. Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 25 is 5. 4 times 5 is 20. So that is one thing about math, guys. just because this skill, 16 to the 1/2, writing it as a square root, yes, that was in 7.1, but they're going to keep bringing it back in 7.2 to make sure you remember. So make sure that you continue to think of, okay, what did we do yesterday that they may be using today as well. All right, and the next one, negative exponent. So that means 8 would have a positive exponent of 1/3, but it has to be on the bottom. If it's negative, you write it on the bottom as a positive. Now again, we're going back to 7.1. 8 to the 1/3 power, 8 is the radicand. The denominator is a 3, so it is a cubic root of 8. What number times itself 3 times gets you to 8? Well, that's a 2. So 8 to the negative 1/3 power, that is 1/2. This goes along with property number 5. You cannot have 7 as a base in your solution more than once. So you write the base one time. This is a fraction. Fraction goes with division. So you're going to go ahead and subtract the 2 exponents. So it's 5/2 minus 1/2. Again, we were blessed. We have a common denominator. Remember, when you're subtracting fractions, common denominator carries over. You're going to actually just subtract the numerators. 5 minus 1 is 4. Well, guys, check this out. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 7 to the power of 2. That means you have 2 7s being multiplied together. 7 times 7 is 49. Okay, so this is what the assignment's going to look like. We're not done yet, though. I would never leave you with just 5. There's so many different things that can go on. So we're going to go ahead and do 12 examples. Okay, so if you're not understanding, don't worry, lots of time. Number 6. 9 to the power of 1/6 times 9 to the power of 1/3. You can only have 9 in your solution one time. Okay, so I'm going to write the 9. Multiplication goes with addition. So I have to add the 2 exponents. Okay, now we're going to see how well you remember all of our rules with fractions. We're adding fractions. You can't add fractions unless you have a common denominator, guys. So I'm going to have to multiply that second fraction, top and bottom, by 2. I'm leaving the 1/6. That's fine. But this 1 times 2 is now a 2. 3 times 2 is now a 6. You have to have a common denominator. The base stays. My common denominator is a 6. That carries on over. Add the numerators. 1 plus 2 is 3. Well, 3/6, I can reduce that. That's 1/2. Now back to 7/1. 9 to the 1/2 power is the same as the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. Now, do you see where they kind of stepped it up? In your assignment, you'll notice the first ones will be pretty basic, just going through the properties, allowing you to work with them a little bit. Then they'll start doing little things like this, where, yes, the setup is great. Keep the base, add the exponents, but you have to have a common denominator. So making sure that you do remember that from way back when you worked with fractions in elementary school. They're still around today. Number 7, you cannot have 81 as a base on both top and bottom. So what you have to do is write the 81 once. This is a fraction, which means you're dividing. Division goes with subtraction. So it's the top exponent minus the bottom exponent. So 81, hey, we got a common denominator, awesome. Carry that 8 over. You're subtracting the top. 5 minus 3 is 2. I can reduce 2/8 is 1/4. Oh, back to 7.1, guys. 81 is your radicand. It goes underneath. 4 is your index. This is an even index. This is a positive number, so it's positive and negative. What number times itself 4 times gets you to 81? Well, it could be a positive 3 or a negative 3. I hope you guys are having fun. I'm loving this. Okay, next one. If you have an exponent outside of a group, everything gets that exponent. So check this out. 64 gets an exponent of 1/2 times 49 gets an exponent of 1/2. Now this is your 7.2. Now we're going back to 7.1. The square root of 64, because that's what 64 to the 1/2 power is, times the square root of 49. The square root of 64, 8 times 8 fell on the floor. When he got up, it was 64. And the square root of 49 is 7. Multiply those things together. 8 times 7 is 56. Ta-da! All right, this is getting exciting. Now we're on to number 9, almost double digits. This 1/2 has to go to everything. So 36 gets a power of 1/2. Now x already has an exponent, okay? So it has x squared. That's what it is here. We gave it another exponent. Okay, so this one's a little bit trickier. 36 to the 1/2 is the same thing as the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is 6. Okay, so 36 was given an exponent of 1/2. 36 to the 1/2 power is the same thing as the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is 6. Now, you have your base, that's x. X cannot have two exponents. I have an exponent inside and an exponent outside. So you multiply them. 2 times 1/2, well, 1/2 of 2 is 1, so I have 6x. Okay, now this one is tricky, so here we go. Shake it up, get ready, put on your seatbelt. All right, I have a fraction. There's 4 over 2. Okay, those are not exponents, so we're just going to go ahead and simplify it. 4 divided by 2, hey, it's 2. All right, got that. If you ever have a variable and it does not show an exponent, it's an unwritten 1, okay? So on the top, x has a 1, y has a 1. You cannot have x's on top and bottom. So you write the base once, so it's x. Top exponent is 1 minus bottom exponent, it's 2/3. Okay, so top has a 1, bottom has a 2/3, it's always top minus bottom. You cannot subtract this like it is because you have to have a common denominator. I'm going to change my 1 to 3 over 3 because 3 over 3 still is 1. It's equivalent, but now I can go ahead and combine them through subtraction because the denominator matches. So I'd have x, the denominator is a 3, it carries on over. 3 minus 2 is 1. Same thing with y, you guys. So if I have y, the top is a 1, minus the exponent on the bottom, it's 1/3. Well, I can't subtract it like that. You need a common denominator. So it's y to the 3/3 minus 1/3. I still have a y in the problem. The denominator is a 3. What you're actually subtracting is the top. 3 minus 1 is 2. Now that one was a little bit tricky. You just divided the numbers in front. 4 divided by 2 is how I got the 2. 1 minus 2/3, we found it to be 1/3, so x has an exponent of 1/3. 1 minus 1/3, we made that common denominator. Y had an exponent of 2/3. You can leave it like this, but I'm going to show you, this is kind of cool. 2 would be out front. Both of these have a denominator of 3, meaning I could put them underneath the cubic root. I'd have 1x under the cubic root, and I'd have 2 y's under the cubic root. These two things actually mean the same thing. Okay, if you understood to here, rock on, air high five. This is cool though. If you see this, it's really cool to realize that they actually are equivalent to one another. Math is awesome. Like you can write the answer so many different ways and it means the same thing. So just kind of food for thought. Next one. Now here's the deal. Sometimes they're going to be little stinkers. Like this whole time they've been giving you fraction exponents, right? Now here they're like, haha, we're going to trick you and we're going to give you a 4th root. Well, a 4th root, it is the same thing as this. This is your radicand. That's what's underneath the symbol. So that will go in the parentheses because all of this is underneath the 4th root. So that means all of it gets the power of 1/4. So 8 gets an exponent of 1/4. X to the power of 8 gets an exponent of 1/4. Y to the power of 4 gets an exponent of 1/4. Okay, now if I go ahead, this is a 4th root of 8. Now I can't break that down because 8 is 2 times 4 and 4 is 2 times 2. I only have 3. In order to break it down, you would need 4. So your final answer is going to contain a 4th root of 8. It can't be simplified, okay? You'll have an x in your final answer. Notice it's not underneath the radical. Okay, that's coming out. Exponents. You have an exponent inside and an exponent outside, so you got to multiply them. 1/4 of 8. Or if you multiply top times top, bottom times bottom, you get 8 over 4, which is a 2. Y is in the problem. If you multiply this, 4 times 1/4, remember when you multiply something by its denominator, the 4's would cross cancel, leaving you just 1y. And again, these last two, this is as hard as it's going to get. They're not all going to be challenging like that, but the last thing I want to do is just do a bunch of easy questions with you, and then during your practice homework, you get a couple challenging ones. So I am picking some more challenging ones just so you have something to look at to help you. Again, we have those Zoom calls where if you're doing your homework and you get stuck, please join the Zoom call and say, hey, Becker, let's do number 10 together. And I would be more than happy, number one, to see you and be able to talk to you, but also work you through some math. All right, one more question, and I'm going to let you go for the day, and you can practice these skills on your own. Whoa, negative exponent. Okay, so here's the kicker. If you have a negative exponent not in the bottom of a fraction, okay, so like if I have 6 to the negative power 2, remember the property says, oh, put it on the bottom, and now it shows as a positive. Well, if you have a negative on the bottom, you can do that property in reverse, meaning I can take that 36 and by bringing it up to the top, because right now it's negative on the bottom, so if I bring it up to the top, the negative goes away. So it's 36 to the 1/2 power. There you go, 7.1. 36 to the 1/2 power is equivalent to the square root of 36, which is plus or minus 6. The reason why it's plus or minus, this is an index of 2. This is an even number. This is a positive number. 6 times 6 is 36. Negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. So this puppy actually has 2 solutions. Again, miss you guys so much. I hope you're enjoying our little math videos. You can watch them many, many times. Hey, maybe this is what you can do at night. Eat some popcorn, watch some algebra. Super sweet. Again, hope to see you on some Zoom calls. Take care. Talk to you soon.